Welcome to the Life in Michigan podcast. Life in Michigan is more than an online magazine. We share the stories, experiences, and vibrant personalities that make the Great Lakes state truly unique. In this podcast, we bring you inspiring, heartwarming, and sometimes unexpected conversations with people who call Michigan home. From the rugged beauty of the Upper Peninsula to the bustling creativity of Kalamazoo, we'll cover the stories and define what it means to live, work, and play in Michigan. Today we are talking with our friend Liz Barney, the community organizer behind Ann Arbor's wonderful Open Spoon gatherings. Liz is a multi-talented photographer, filmmaker, and writer whose life path has taken her from Michigan State to Hawaii and then back to Michigan's Washtenaw Food Hub. Today we are diving into her fascinating backstory. Settle in and enjoy. Liz, it is so good to have you on the Life in Michigan podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so impressed by all of the stories you guys cover across Michigan.
Oh man, we're super impressed with you, and we've enjoyed getting to know you, first meeting you at the Creative Mornings a while back, and then also being participants in your Open Spoon. And for folks that don't know you, maybe you can give a few words about who you are and, what you like to do and
Do you
so
want to
forth.
go 20 words, 100 words?
Yeah.
Use as many words as you want.
Oh gosh, who am I? Well, I am a human. I really like nature, obviously. And I love telling stories, and that kind of happens in a variety of modalities: photography, writing, filmmaking, and then more recently, a lot of community organizing. And I really just, in general, love the way that shared stories and experiences can create deeper connections for people. And yeah, that's about it.
That's pretty impressive. That's huge.
You're definitely a fantastic storyteller. But what was it? I mean, are you originally from Michigan?
Yeah, well, I was born in DC, but my parents are from Michigan. They were just
Okay.
briefly out there. My parents actually met in the UP, but they're
Oh,
both from the west side of the state. And they met at Michigan Tech, and then my dad got recruited to work for the government right out of college. And so I was born in DC, but then they moved back to Michigan when I was like a year old. So
so you've
for
been here
all
since.
I'm well, yes, I've been here for my formative years of growing up for sure.
Awesome. But you were in Hawaii, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I like to.
Wow. That's
I was
wild.
there for about 10 years, and then I came back, which
Wow.
was a surprise. But here I am.
So where were you in Hawaii? Which island? Just curious.
I was mostly on Oahu and the Big Island.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Nice.
yeah. So I grew up kind of in Brighton for a little bit, and then when I was 8, my family moved to a farm in Stockbridge out towards Jackson, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of call it like growing up in the Amish Mafia. Uh, yeah, because like I had to, wear a head covering and a dress down to the floor to show, and I was in submission to the man's authority at all times. So I kind of looked like an Amish girl, but then also my dad was very much like, let's doomsday prep and prepare for, when we have to one day fight the government and stuff like that, which I blame his days of working for the government.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, so yeah, I call it like the Amish Mafia, and I didn't think I was ever actually going to be able to go to college, because I was supposed to kind of be betrothed, and then I got a little too independent for my dad's liking and kind of got kicked out. I'm not sure, and ended up going to college. And I wanted to be a journalist, but everyone was like, "You're great at teaching, you should do that." And I had grown up teaching my younger brothers and sisters how to read and write, so I was like, well, I don't know what else I'm going to do, because this is kind of my first exposure to the real world, and I was having massive culture shock. So I got a degree in special education and then I got recruited for my first job out in Hawaii, which took me there.
Oh.
And I like to say like the vocation didn't stick, but the location did. Because once you get into the surfing and the mountain hiking and climbing and all of that, it's yeah, it's really just a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. Where did you end up going to school?
Michigan State.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
go
Yeah.
green.
Go
Yeah.
green.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I in prepping for this podcast interview, I spent a little bit of time on your blog and your website, and I got kind of like I spent probably way too much time reading through your posts and all of the your some of your documentaries that you've made, and I'm like, oh my God, you're such a beautiful photographer. Like
Oh,
those
thanks, Brianna.
pictures are so beautiful. I'm like, you don't even really talk about that skill at all. Like, they're so beautiful. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, I'm gonna go back to her original one, right? So I dug back all the way back to one where you went you went on an expedition to find it. You were photography. We were doing the photography for a crew that were looking for a plane for this
Oh,
guy.
Lieutenant Steve's. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm like, what a wonderful little article. But did you train for that? Because it looked really hard.
Yeah, no, that was kind of like the period where I was transitioning from being a teacher to a photographer. And yeah, when I quit teaching, I sometimes joke about the hardest part of being a teacher was all the yelling. It was like stop sitting, stop moving, don't take a shortcut around the sidewalk, just go all the way around the grass. And I just yell back, well, I'm a teacher. I can do whatever I want. Which is when I realized that maybe my students weren't the only ones with ADHD. But I think that I realized in that process that I kind of am neurodivergent, but the difference is that I was allowed to just kind of run around and discover and learn through my interest, which really suited me. And so I really struggled with a system where I had these really brilliant, creative, imaginative kids that were being punished because they didn't want to sit still for 8 hours. And I was like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then when I quit, I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I decided to kind of take 6 months and just explore and travel a bit. And I was taking photos. And then I thought, I'm going to be a surf photographer. Um, and so I moved back to Hawaii. I'd taken a sabbatical over to Costa Rica where I was working on this nonprofit doing this alternative outdoor education uh, program that I was kind of helping set up. But anyways, I got really into taking photos of surfers, and then I came back and I realized I didn't want to do that, but I did really like photography. So I just started capturing photos of all the adventures that I was doing. Um, and I was doing a lot of climbing and rappelling and different things like that. I kind of like, I don't know, I think I had a death wish in my 20s. I just was an adrenaline junkie. Um, and somebody I had met when I was on a boat that was helping escort a race between Molokai to Oahu. It's a stand-up paddleboard race. And they had been one of the team of athletes that were competing in this race. And I was just tagging along on the boat, and they had added me on Facebook and saw my photos. And they asked me if I wanted to be part of this expedition for this group called Adventure Science, which is basically athletes that go out and do kind of like recon missions in places that are hard to reach, but they're athletes and scientists.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it was just kind of this little passion project of bringing together scientists and athletes. And I think that they kind of were like, well, she seems like she could keep up with us. And they offered to fly me out to California to go do the search for the plane wreck. And I was like, I'd never gotten paid for any type of photography before, so that was probably my first actual gig. And I was like, not going to say no, but I also didn't really know what I was doing. And then I get out there and I am huffing and puffing to haul this like 40, 50 pound pack over Bishop's Pass. And they're all just regular athletes. And I thought I was going to die, but I had so much fun.
Oh my gosh.
So Lieutenant Steve, they didn't find his any plane wreck material on that expedition, did they? Or have they since?
No, they didn't. So that was someone who, the person who kind of maybe facilitated that particular adventure was does a lot of research on plane wrecks, and it's kind of his passion. And so he basically, Lieutenant Steves was, for context, he was, gosh, and I'm not going to probably be the most factual in the retelling of this off the top of my head, but he was a military test pilot, and he was flying this plane, and he took off, and the mist kind of came up, and he disappeared, just completely went off the radar. And then after a month or something, they just decided he was dead. And then I want to say like 40 days later, he crawled into a hunter's camp and was kind of like, help. And the story was that he had parachuted down, but his parachute had kind of caught fire from like that. So there had been a fire, that kind of this combustion in his cockpit. And when he parachuted out, there were a little bit of fire that caught to his parachute, and so he came down pretty rough and kind of broke both ankles when he landed. And then he managed to crawl and survive off berries and rivers, and then somehow broke into a hunter's cabin and found some cans of beans or something like that, and then managed to survive until the middle of the Sierra Nevadas, in the middle of nowhere. Until then, he stumbled into this camp. And so when he first, the news breaks, he's this hero, he's survived, it's this epic, heroic story. And then, as everyone does, they start digging into his past, and they're like, well, he kind of was a seedy guy. He liked to drink. He was a gambler. Do we really trust his story? We think maybe he's actually a spy for the Russians. And so then it became this whole narrative of maybe he actually sold the plane to Russia so that they could, get information on this newest, latest, greatest technology. And he spent a lot of time trying to defend his honor. His wife left him. I think he became quite the alcoholic. And then he later died in another plane crash where he became a private test pilot and died in a plane crash. So planes were not his thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
but
crazy.
then a troop of Boy Scouts many years later found the plastic shell from his plane that kind of matched, and they thought maybe his story was kind of, maybe he was exonerated posthumously, but then people said that's lightweight and it's easy to drop. And so for this particular mission, this guy had done a lot of analytics on the weather graphs and patterns and the wind patterns and trajectories of all these things to map out. He thought he knew exactly where the cockpit, like the seat, would have landed when he ejected. And so that was what we were looking for.
Wow.
And we did not learn anything, or we did not find anything, but we did learn a lot of things. So
wow. Yeah, I would imagine that would be incredibly tricky. It was on Substack. There's a guy, Jason Odell, who's a photographer, that was talking to another photographer and explorer like yourself, David Kokanen, and he had actually been on like the explorations for the Titanic.
Oh,
But
yeah.
but he also got contacted by Jeff Bezos to find the rockets, the F-1 rockets from the Apollo 11. And so you talking about trying to find an ejection seat in the middle of the forest made me think of that, because I'm thinking, how in the hell? And they did the same thing. Oh, we know the trajectory of the potential flight path of this rocket when it was re-entering, because NASA didn't track it or care about it because it was garbage. And
yeah.
trying to find that. So yeah,
Wow,
you just reminded me of
fascinating.
that.
That's so cool. Is this a local photographer?
No, I think David lives in Idaho,
Yeah,
Okay.
and
out west, the
Jason
Pacific.
is in Colorado.
Colorado, yeah.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
they just did an interview on Substack, and it was pretty interesting. They both have very interesting histories, but David Kokanen, he's a lawyer, and he's also this amazing photographer, and his wife is this whoo, amazing photographer and storyteller, and she makes documentaries. You should check them out. Like
I
you,
will have to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Yeah. So obviously, we've just demonstrated what a wonderful storyteller you are. You just told that wonderful story off the top of your head, and it was beautifully executed.
I
People
don't know
should.
how factual it was.
I read the. I
That's
read
okay.
the
Stories.
thing. I read it. I read your post, and it tied to what you wrote. So yeah, there you
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
go.
I'm like, my memory is, fails me sometimes, but
Yeah, well, as long as we're talking about old posts, I went back to one where you were recapping your travels in 2016.
okay.
And in that one you shared a beautiful story about a cab driver who used to work at a suicide prevention hotline. And he told you about this, the best cure for isolation was taking someone out to eat because a happy stomach was love.
Mm-hmm.
He even proposed to his wife by hiding the question at the bottom of a soup bowl.
That's what he claims,
That's
but
what he,
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, so you wrote back then that the interaction inspired you to look for stories that remind people they aren't alone. And so looking at the open spoon today, bringing people together over food and shared stories at the Washtenaw Food Hub, it feels like you were maybe embracing the cab driver's philosophy a little bit. What do you think? Do you think that's a thread in there in the food hub?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely been a thread in my life. I think that I've always started with a love for stories, and I've always had a love for place. And I've never really considered myself a foodie, but in the last year or so, I think I've learned that connecting to food that's grown around you, I feel like it's actually been one of the most transformational things for my well-being mentally, physically, everything like that. And so, yeah, I think it's just a new evolution of all of that. And at the Open Spoon, I do have people share stories of personal experiences around a common theme, which I kind of pull from nonviolent communications list of shared human needs. And I think that the idea is that we all have different perspectives and different backgrounds, but we all have the same shared desires. And, kind of at the end of the day, the same experiences, but in different ways. And so I think that it has really helped me in my life to hear other people's stories, um, and, be able to not feel alone. And so it's my hope that other people have a place to do that for sure. And like, I think that, um, I really appreciate things like the Moth, for example. I've been to a number of those, but I remember going to one in Detroit, and I remember being struck by the fact that the people on stage were not representative of the demographic of that area.
Mm.
And then I was sitting next to a woman um, who said that she really loved listening to the podcast when she was cleaning houses during the day and stuff like that. And she said, "Oh, but I would never go up there." And I realized that it is kind of it to me, like I could see where it's kind of intimidating, and you're performing because you're trying to compete to get on the radio in front of other
Yeah.
people, and you're judged and you're given a score on stage. And so I think one of the highest compliments that I've got from people coming to the Open Spoon is that, I may be able to tell a story, and these are people who would never consider themselves traditionally a storyteller. And I think that, as someone who's worked as a journalist and a filmmaker, and I feel like for, I've told hundreds of people's stories. I really feel passionate now about creating environments and tools to empower people to tell their own stories. And right now in today's society, I feel like there's a few people in power have kind of decided whose stories are important, whether
Hmm.
it's through news outlets or politics or social media algorithms. And so a lot of people don't really feel like their story matters and don't feel like their voice matters anymore. And there's a lot of frustration and polarization. of a lot of people who have the same shared desires but different perspectives. And so I think my goal is to really, in a very small little micro system, like a room of like just a couple dozen people, like create a space where everyone feels like they have something that they can share. Everyone feels like their experience and their voice matters. And we can all come together and connect on the shared human experience, our connection to this, all really relying on the same natural resources that we love, like the planet, the plants, and then also the food.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a very tiny little experiment of like, how can I actually like take these experiences I've had and like create a living lab for us to all explore it together. And I've just been so tickled to be able to have you all come and join me, because it's just, yeah, like something new happens every time. That's all just part of the experiment.
Yeah. What I love about the Open Spoon is there isn't that performative aspect, because that's been my understanding. I've actually not gone to the Moth, so I have to be honest, and I've been intrigued by it, but I remember listening to a podcast or something about how people have to prepare, and they have to be, if you're selected to be one of the people, you then have to be coached and all this. And I'm like, why? Just tell your story and do it the way you want it. But I don't, like you mentioned, I don't think people really want to be like graded on their stories. And it can be, like you said, very intimidating for some folks that when you're with them on a one-on-one kind of situation, or in a group setting where you may know each other fairly well, or maybe just a little bit, those stories just come out because people just want to talk. They just want to share what their lives. And like you mentioned, people feel reduced and or constricted. And that's what I like about the Open Spoon, because you don't even really, you could just go. You don't
Yeah.
you don't have to tell a story. You can just come and hang out, meet somebody, or just sit by yourself and enjoy. That's what I like about it. It's totally open and free in that respect.
Yeah, and it's kind of evolved. Like the plants part was added by, a plant expert, and the food part was kind of like added by my friends who are really into food. And what I've noticed is I've started taking time to, like, we take time before we start of like talking about all the different plants that we brought, and then people talk about all the different dishes they brought. And what's cool is I've noticed that some people who never tell a story always bring like a really cool um, dish, and they have some cool story or explanation behind it. And it makes me realize that there's so many different ways for us to share and contribute and like a bit of ourselves, and it doesn't have to be a story. And like, I think about it, kind of reminds me of my time as a special ed teacher, just kind of like, realizing that we had this rainbow of different colors of brains, but we kind of like our societal systems said this is acceptable and this type of brain is acceptable if you have a red or a blue brain, and then we designed all of society for it. And then if you have a yellow or a red brain, you don't fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, some people express themselves through story, some people express themselves through photography or art, some people through food. And so it has been cool to see how naturally stories are my thing, but then things that aren't my thing, other people are kind of like bringing these bits to it that I would have never thought. And um, on the story side, I'm actually thinking about just, I have a vase that people write their name and put it in it. And I've been toying with the idea of just getting rid of that altogether, because something that's really cool that I've noticed is that, when one person comes up and shares a story, people will be like, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, or I'm not sure if I'm going to tell a story when people come. And I think that's cool, because then when someone shares a story, someone else thinks about something and they're like, oh, you know what? That reminds me of the time I did this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we had an Open Spoon where there were 10 stories back to back. They were all separate experiences, but they were kind of just like one of those almost like run on stories where it's just, I love seeing like the room light up when we're all like, oh, we've all felt this. And it's just like that really like cool energy in the room that's like, you can feel that palpable buzz. And that's like
Yeah.
something that I feel like you can't really manufacture or prepare for.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea of having a prompt for each of the, Open Spoons gives somebody, if somebody wants to like either challenge themselves or they're just a natural storyteller, then they can go, oh, I can riff on that. But then I like the fact that you can kind of A to C it, where oh, this makes me think of this, and this makes me think of this, and then the next story is like, oh, it has nothing to do necessarily with the, well, tangentially next to the theme, but not like spot on. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
I'm still waiting for you guys to share a story.
You
I'm
know,
really looking forward to that day.
Yeah, well, you never know. We might just pop up.
yeah.
You shared some delicious dishes and other things and good company, which are also beautiful ways to
You
contribute.
know, the few times we've been, um, we've always found ourselves at the table with people that we've not sat with before, which is always kind of interesting. And they're just these wonderful, very rich conversations that are happening at the table, right? Like, and additionally, I wanted to go back to the plants where you bring in the plants and then we all make a bouquet and then you say dress the table before we start eating. And I love that because it's kind of like this little icebreaker. You're up there, like everybody's like, oh, now what are we doing with these plants? And do you write your name on it? And where do we put it? And so like there's all this like people that have been a couple times like, oh, will you just do this? And then people over here like, what? You know, like, so it's kind of sharing information.
It's a task that you all have to do together. You have to set the table.
So, but it gives you something to do and interact with around, and because you're required to have a little bit of conversation up there when you're picking which plants, you know. So I like that piece, and it's not like a forced icebreaker, I guess, if you will. Like, oh yeah, walk around and talk to 3 different people you haven't talked to today. Like that just feels kind of weird. You're looking around like, who do I not know, right? Like,
and like my friend who's a therapist told me that when you're doing things with your hands, you're activating the parasympathetic nerve, which kind of relaxes you, which I didn't know, but I'm like, that totally makes sense because I'm always doing things with my hands. And so I love having a purpose, being kind of, I don't even like the word neurodivergent because it's basically like saying that someone's neuronormal, and I disagree with that. But having, shall we say, the sensitive brain, being the sensitive soul that I am, we'll call it that. I get really awkward about walking into networking events. So I like having a task that has a purpose and I'm learning something. And so instead of having to like talk about what am I going to talk, you're looking at a person, what do I talk to you about? It's like, let's talk about these plants. Oh, I think I've seen this one in my backyard, or well, where did this come from? And then you're touching with your hands. And yeah, I feel like that's a beautiful example of something that's evolved that like was not, I'm not a plant expert, and like it's just not something I would have even have thought of. So I think it's really cool to see the different things that happen when you bring people in place together.
So you have these events in a really cozy space out at the Washtenaw Food Hub, on what is that? Whitmore Lake
Road, I think.
Yeah. How did you come to be? How did it find its home there?
Well, I live near there, and last year I had a job in marketing, and when I lost my job, one of my mentors told me that I should take a 6 month sabbatical to explore. And she told me that she had done the same. And so then that kind of led her to, exploring new things, and then eventually starting a Detroit Straight Filling Station. And she was like, you should explore. And so I decided that for 6 months, I wasn't going to do anything for money. And then I knew that they had, they were trying to activate this market. And so I volunteered to help them with kind of like doing some marketing and ideating around setting up like a newsletter and community events for their farm market and things like that. And so that was kind of the start of my relationship with them. And then I don't know how much I feel like I could just tell really long stories, but then around the same time, I was at a little writing group, and a few people I knew were kind of frustrated with the state of the world. And, I was kind of like talking about how I prefer to like create solutions instead of protesting what I don't like. And we decided to propose doing a little fundraiser for food insecurity at the Food Hub, and I proposed that to them. And so, kind of taking our frustrated energy and having a little event. I called it Farm Fancy. We had a little tea party and raised money for food gatherers, and that was my first collaboration with them. And it was just kind of this idea of like creating the change that you want to see. And yeah, from there, then like I'm just going to tell you the three different things then that led to the open spoon being there.
Yeah.
I separately had been exploring in this writing group uh, uh, different concepts, and one that's really fascinated me is these philosophers' dinners. They called them symposiums. So like there's Plato's symposium on love, for example, which is where all these different people and creatives, like you'd have a comic and musician, and they'd all kind of basically get drunk and like propose their ideas around an idea. And they did this on love and wrote it all up. And I was reading through it, and something that really struck me was when Plato tells a story of this woman, Diotima's theory on love. And everything in there is kind of ridiculous, to be honest. But hers was the one thing that made sense to me. And it's kind of, she describes this ladder of love and how like the ultimate goal of love is like you're seeing beauty in other people, and then it lets you kind of see the beauty in everything, and then in yourself. And then she kind of talks about the ultimate goal of love not being like a higher form of love, not being just like the creation of another life, but like the creation of intellectual birthing intellectual babies, basically. And to her, it was when you come to recognize and love like the differences, and how like putting two different types of brains together creates a whole knowledge. And so that was kind of the concept of platonic love, is like recognizing how we all in our all separate differences, when we come together, we kind of create this like knowledge. And it's interesting because some people believe Diotima was a pen name for Aspasia, who was a female philosopher, but also kind of a comic. She used comedy to comment, and she was prosecuted for I forget what the word is, but disrespect, and different things like that. But it's hilarious because that concept is the concept that became the foundation for platonic love. So it's a woman's idea that was credited to a man, of course.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, why weren't there seats for women at the table? And so my women's writing group and I decided to have a dinner that was a symposium for like bringing the feminine voice up, not even like tied to genitalia, but just like giving more space for like the feminine philosophy.
Yep.
And we were like, well, what would that look like? And so my friend told me to like, if I could lead this. And I was like, after dinner, I was like, why don't we all just share about a time when we experienced love? Because like a man, that this symposium was basically like, I think it's this, and it's thinking from your head. But I'm like, what about if we started thinking from your gut? Like, when did I feel this? And so we all shared stories of times that we felt the feeling of love. None of it was romantic. And then I was like, why don't we go around and like notice what we loved about the love stories? And then we started kind of like finding different meanings and stitching together our stories in a type of quilt. And it almost felt like we were doing what Diotima was like talking about, bringing together all of our differences. And around the same time, I got invited to a dinner party down the road from the Food Hub, where they were like, do stand-up comedy, because I do comedy sometimes after dinner. And so like I was like, I need a mic. And so I like looked around, and there was like a wooden cooking spoon. And so I grabbed that and I used it as my mic. And then I felt really awkward because it was just me performing in front of everyone. So then I like turned and I passed it to everyone. And I was like, the next person, I was like, all right, you have to tell a joke or a silly story or something like that, or impersonation or whatever. And like we all went around, even the little kids were, and it just like was this whole like we were all laughing, and it kind of like was a good feeling of like, instead of just being like, hey, look at me, it was like, hey, look at us, let's have fun together. And so then as I was starting to do more, I was just experimenting with a whole ton of events during this time, basically. And so then I was like, let's have a farm to table dinner. And so we did this down to earth dinner, and everyone wore colors of the earth. And we went around and asked for donations from farmers. And my friend and I, we cooked this whole dinner, took donations. And I think we were up till 2 a.m. like cleaning. We were so exhausted. We prepped for it. Um, and then we kind of realized that like we definitely lost money, but we realized that the most enjoyable part of the experience was kind of creating it together. And so basically, I kind of just started taking all these different experiences and then bringing them together into one event. And I really liked the idea of kind of following the moon because our original like uh our original like even like religious structures, I would say like maybe like spiritual structures or whatever beforehand were based around not like looking top up for this top down guidance from a man, but looking down at the earth around us and what's happening. And that was what guided our gatherings. And so it wasn't like, oh well, what works for you? Is it Tuesday or Thursday?
Yeah.
There's no question. It was just, well, what is the earth doing? And it was kind of like recognizing that the earth is kind of in charge and we're just kind of its stewards and we rely on it. And so then this whole concept kind of like emerged of these things coming together of like farm to table dinner that everyone can bring something to, whether it's a dish or a story, and we're all sharing around a shared experience. And then after the stories, when I remember to do it, I really like asking people to share what they noticed and philosophizing from the gut up in honor of Diotima. And that's
Awesome.
basically how it came to be at the Food Hub. And I'm so grateful for their hostess there. They've been very grateful. I'm still doing like a marketing exchange trade with them. Every month I do a little consulting with them as a trade in exchange for using the space. And so they've been very, since we don't charge admission for the open spoons, they've been very grateful in letting us continue to do that. And even giving people who attend like 10% off coupons to go shop at the local market. And so none of this would have happened without their partnership. And like Deb and Richard of Tantre Farms, who own the Food Hub, have also been like really instrumental in kind of like just supporting, donating produce, and even like giving me ideas of like what's in season and what might be good thematically for each full moon, and kind of being mentors for me and everyone else. So yeah, I'm just really, really grateful for all those happen chance things kind of coming together.
Yeah. What I when I was listening to you, I was also thinking about the fact that the resonance of the kind of the organic nature of the earth and letting the gathering grow organically, that kind of feeds directly into also the storytelling, because I believe that everybody has the capacity to tell stories. Like I mentioned before, I think that we all, if we are asked a question and asked about our lives, will tell complete strangers about something that's happened to us or that we are really passionate about. And I feel like what you're doing is such a great way to pull that up and also get away from the the patriarchy and all that bullshit that's so pervasive in our society, and just have it at least be a space where everything is where people feel safe to share their stories. That's another aspect too, because
Hopefully, yeah.
if you go somewhere, you might not necessarily feel empowered to be able to share something that feels risky or vulnerable, and that's sometimes I think the best things.
Yeah. No, for sure. Especially with social media and like not just like the negative comments, but also like I feel like with the algorithms and everything, there's almost become this societal pressure of if you put something out there and you just get one like, it's a failure.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I think that's one of the reasons why I've been back and forth on this, but as of right now, I haven't been sharing any recordings of any of the stories online. No one brings really a cell phone. You don't ever see anyone posting to social media, and sometimes I forget to take photos, and so there's not a lot of documentation of it. And I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Because in a world where everything is about performing for an online audience that isn't even around you, I kind of like that it's a space where everyone just kind of puts down their phone and it's just like I'm sharing my story. And you're not feeling like you're being judged. It's not like we look around after we're telling our stories and we're like, oh no, only 2 people are holding their thumbs up. Shit, I'm gonna be fed to the lions,
Well, I think there's something about the physical environment that you don't want your phone, right? You just like it just feels like you've been transported back, a few decades, and you're sitting on these, like folding chairs, and you've got this, very, basic tableware, and you're eating a potluck meal with strangers, right? Like some of them are strangers, and you just feel like you've gone back in time a little bit, like a little bit of a time machine. So I actually forget about my phone while I'm there. Like
Yay.
I don't even think about it, right? That, like, yeah, because you're just so engrossed in the people that are around you, and then you want to listen to the stories, and you just forget it, right? I think that's part of it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I know there was one time where someone came and was kind of enraptured and capturing everything, and it was weird because it almost kind of like adjusted the vibe. And for a minute I thought like, should I make a rule no phones? But I don't like having too many rules. And then so I really kind of like hearing like that, like cultivating an environment where people just don't even like think about their phone. They're
Yeah.
just I like that idea of like you're so engrossed with what's going around you, you're not even thinking to pick up your phone. Like that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, wow. That I'm so glad that we got to talk about the open spoon, but I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about your other passion projects, which is filmmaking. You did a PBS documentary on it was Island Cowgirls. Could you share
Mhm.
a little bit with our listeners about how they could watch it and what it is?
Yeah, sure. So Island Cowgirls is actually a combination of two films. One is called The Last Rodeo and one is Girly. And they were two different profiles of two different female or Wahine Paniolo or Hawaiian cowgirls, basically. And this was from when I was living on the Big Island. And they're on two different sides of the island, but they were both kind of grappling with the question of should I stay or should I go, as they're facing kind of uncertainty around land use and things. And so something I learned that was really fascinating is that a quarter of the state's land is actually managed by ranchers because
Oh,
it's a state where everything grows 24/7. And so if you think about the task of managing the fire load, keeping the fire load of dry grasses down, invasives, things like that, um, I had a lot of friends that worked in on Oahu that worked in invasive removal and things like that. And it was always felt like it was a ton of money and it was like you get rid of a few plants and then there's an explosion of 20 more. And so I think that I had never really thought about ranchers as environmentalists. And then I started spending time with these ladies and I realized that they actually were doing incredible work to manage the ecosystem. Um, but because most of the land there is leased and the lease terms are very, shaky, um, they it was kind of disincentivized people from making long-term investments into the land, and so they were kind of like, can we actually stay here? Is there a future for us? And so it was really cool to capture that story and work with them on telling that because, and I asked them and I asked everyone, like, what is the story you feel needs to be told? And that was what came out. And what was really cool is that we did some different cuts for like legislation and things like that. And then people started calling people up and being like, you know what? I want to come over and see, like, maybe I've been on the wrong side of this. And it was really cool because it was literally an example of a story where people had the same desire of like what's best for the land, but different perspectives. And so once people came out, and I think that's the power of documentary film is that it allows you, instead of telling you what to think, it's giving
yeah.
you a chance to walk a day in another person's shoe and see a perspective that you might have not have seen. And it started conversations that led to a lot more cohesive management of the land. So it was really cool. It was on PBS nationally for a year, and then after that expired, um, the local branch of Hawaii picked it up to continue publishing it on their YouTube channel. So you
Oh,
can look it up on YouTube now.
nice.
I'll find it and put a link in the show notes. I did find Claudia. What inspired you to do that particular little, it was fun. It was funny and fun, and yeah, it's like a little tiny it's not tiny, what, 10 minutes? About a
Eight
therapist.
minutes.
Yeah. What inspired
Yeah.
you to do that or make that
Claudia is.
Yeah.
Claudia is a reclusive psychotherapist whose world turns upside down when she discovers her favorite client is not who she thought she was. Um, and it's inspired by a variety of different experiences. I feel like I'm like, I don't have time to go. But yeah, it just kind of, I mean, basically at the core, the same idea of like, you know, we all have different perspectives and bringing them together can actually create a little bit more cohesion. And it was just a playful, exaggerated way of playing it out. And
I did laugh
you
out
know,
loud.
good.
Especially when she was playing chess with the chicken. That was really funny.
Amazing. Yay.
Yay.
What's funny is that I came up with this idea when I'd first moved back and I had an improv troupe. I took improv classes because I was looking for creative connection. And so then this group of us all kind of bonded and kept taking classes at Planet Ann together. And I kind of wrote it with my troupe in mind. And I got to like, and then I was like, hey, I have an idea. And there's this one scene where I need to have like a taco party. And why don't we just all come and like, here's the outline of the story, but then maybe you all can just like take on your characters however you want, and we can improv it out together. And we actually had a taco party and had margaritas and just had a lot of fun. And then I kind of sat on the idea and then came back to it more recently this past year, and I was like, you know what, I think I actually want to like finish this. And I just really had to film with two other people. And what was funny is that when I put it out, one of my friends who's a therapist was like, "Oh, this is great because, you know, I work with a lot of youth and they're all using Claude as their therapist now, and they're basically coming up with the same problem you bring up of like this like one-sided yes man that only like sees your perspective and tells you what you want to hear."
Oh,
And so they're like, "That's why you named her Claudia, right?" And I was like, "No, I named her Claudia before AI and Claude was even around." So I think that's just one of those cool things where it's like this divination of, you know, just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just fun. And so, yeah, it's
That's
fun to
awesome.
see how different people have take different things that I wouldn't have even seen.
yeah. So the other one that I was quite charmed with, and I gotta admit, a bit emotional when I was watching it because I loved Angelo's. I have so many memories of going to Angelo's, and your Toast of the Town, where you go through like the last week as they're closing down Angelo's over on in Ann Arbor. Yeah,
Hmm.
that was really special.
Mm.
Behind the scenes kind of moments with that one.
Yeah, no, I loved that project. My friend Mike is also a local filmmaker, and um, he knew that I had a lot of experience with kind of documentary stuff, and so he asked if I wanted to help him with it. And then we were just kind of going to go do an interview and get some B-roll, and then I was like, we have to go back, you know, because I get really like, this is why I'm not good at short. I'm like get really invested in the characters, and so I was like, let's go film the last day. And then we did film the whole last day, and it was really cool the things that came out of that. And then we went back and filmed with him 6 months after he retired, and then we went and filmed with him another 6 months later when he kind of had started his new breakfast ritual at another Greek diner with his family. And so, long story short, there's another longer version of that film that I'm currently sitting on and digesting.
Oh.
Oh, did you watch it, Chuck, before we got on?
No, I've not seen it, so I gotta check it out.
You got to check it out. It's really good. I had no idea of the whole Greek history of restaurants, especially in Ann Arbor. I mean, like, that was fascinating. And then I got quite emotional when he was talking about retiring, and I was like, oh, it was quite lovely. You did a beautiful
They,
job with it.
another great example of like a family and food and a place and how it really brought people together. Really
Yeah,
inspired me for sure being new to Ann Arbor. Yeah.
Yeah. Chocolate chip pancakes. Oh man. That was
yeah,
my
yeah.
favorite there.
It's just something about breakfast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked in the building across the street, and so we would go to Angelo's on the side. Like that was the
Mm.
ritual. You would go to Angelo's on the side, and so I got to know, the guy that was the brother-in-law It was, and
Yes, Jack.
yeah, yeah,
Everyone
Jack.
thinks he's the owner because
Yes.
he was the outgoing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I asked him one day, I said, "Are you the owner?" He's like, "No, I'm just the brother-in-law." And I'm like, "But you act like the owner." He's like, "No, I'm not."
Awesome.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So anything
Cool.
new coming up? Any other projects that you can share about that you've got in the works? Is your 6 months up yet that you're not doing anything?
Yes, no, my time came up and then magically I started getting work right after that, which was kind of wild because I wasn't even looking like really like heartily looking for it. But I'm finishing up a project documenting a really cool affordable housing project to reconnect people to place through it's kind of like a group of people that are trying to bring back the use of industrial hemp in building materials. It's
Oh
something
yeah.
that was put into prohibition for 80 years, but it's actually non-toxic, like really good for thermal insulation, all this other stuff, and you can grow it and it regenerates the soil. And there's so many reasons that we should be doing it here, but there's still like a lot of lost infrastructure and knowledge and hurdles to kind of bringing it back. And so I documented that, and so that film is coming out soon. And I actually also got to do some community development around that in terms of facilitating and hosting different community events in Detroit specifically to bring people into the conversation around how they would want to implement this in their community. And so that was really cool. And then currently I'm in the middle of a story, developing some stories around dairy farmers in Michigan that are transitioning to regenerative grazing to
Ooh.
kind of restore the health of the land and make our food production more environmentally and economically viable, and kind of making it easier for farms to survive while also saving, you know,
Yeah.
the soil's health. So I'm really enjoying that project.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really cool. We just watched this program that included a little segment about a basically dairy farm that sits in the ocean in Belgium.
No
And
way. Yeah.
yeah, and they feed
Crazy.
they feed the cows the all the wasted bread and food from restaurants, basically breads and cereals.
Hmm.
They grind it up into a meal. That's what the cows get fed. The cow poop is scraped up by a robot that then they use that to fuel desalination to give water from the sea to these cows. And
Whoa.
then the cows walk into automatic milkers. When they're ready, they know that they need to get the milk off them. The milk goes down into the next level where then there's basically a processing plant for the milk to be turned into cheese.
And the
Wow.
cheese
Yeah.
is stored below that, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
Yeah.
crazy.
That
It's
is some sci-fi.
I
It
know. And
felt
we're like,
sci-fi.
yeah, I'm like, why don't we have this?
My gosh.
Yeah, it was wild. But anyway,
Wild.
yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, you must both experience so many interesting stories just kind of doing what you are doing. And I'm really impressed by the way that you travel all over Michigan. Like you're in the UP, you're in the West Side, and I you're just constantly out there pollinating.
We
uh,
try. We
yeah.
try.
I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like those stories. I love doing it. I just don't know if it. This is something I go through all the time. I write about it too. It's like I don't know if it matters, but I just like doing it. So.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we think of our website, as an online magazine. Many people will call it a blog, whatever you want to call it. It's a collection of stories at, that normally aren't told in the mainstream media, right? Like we want to capture those stories that aren't getting the attention, sort of like the open spoon, where you have a story you want to tell,
Yeah.
but you're not going to read about it in the Ann Arbor News, but they're still really worthy stories, right? You want to capture them. So we're busy trying to capture some of those and document things, and we've been doing it, what, since 2012?
12. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of the things I really like about your story curation is that it feels very personal and organic, and it really shows through. Like, one thing, I had a therapist when I first moved back to Michigan and I was going through that transition, and one thing she said to me was, to rephrase, stop saying I have to and start trying to say I want to,
Mm.
and just kind of following my gut, and what really lit me up. And I think you are both really great examples of people that just really follow your gut, and you're like, this interests me, this excites me, let's share it. And you're not worried about, like, what do I have to deliver to the algorithm or the readers. And
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
it really creates something so genuine, and there's this like magical little chemistry because you're just kind of following your gut.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. If you chase the algorithm, you'll just drive yourself
Crazy.
insane. It becomes this other thing. It's not. I write what I want to write about. So there you
We're
go.
not telling stories for robots here.
Yeah.
No.
No. Yeah.
So we're at the time, if you can believe it, we're to the lightning round where we have a set of lightning questions for you.
Okay.
And then we have our last question that we ask all of our guests. Is there anybody or you want to give a shout out to, or is there something that we didn't cover that you were hoping that we would ask about?
Yeah, well, I guess when it comes to the open spoon, obviously I'm really grateful to Deb and Richard of Tantre Farms and the Washtenaw Food Hub for hosting us and donating produce and being so supportive. Some of my friends who are chefs, like Parisa and Zoe, have been really supportive in kind of making some dishes to set the tone. And then Trenton has been amazing in just gathering this incredible selection of native plants every moon to really teach people about them. And then there's also a number of people that have been really helpful in coming to help set up or break down. So yeah, I just really am very grateful. And then of course to people like you all who come and share the good energy. And yeah.
Nice. Fantastic. So you ready for a lightning round?
Yes.
She shook her head no,
Yeah.
but she
No,
said yes.
I'm not ready.
I'm not good at being succinct sometimes, so I'm gonna try.
That's okay. That's okay.
So first question is, what is your absolute favorite spot in Ann Arbor to grab coffee or a quick bite to eat?
Ooh, coffee. So all right, this is to be so granola, but one of my favorite things to do is actually take like some Hyperion or Ruse Roast coffee, one of the two, depending on my mood of the week, and actually go down to the docks at Vandermeer. And I have my little camp stove, and I make a little pour over on the dock and watch the river. So it's not an actual place downtown, I know, but Hyperion and Ruse, both great. I can't
Yeah.
decide between one or the other, and then I take it to the Huron River. So it's the trifecta of those three.
Love
Yeah.
that area. I love Vandermeer. That
I
perk
do.
is so
I
good.
do. I was like, where's that dock? And then I caught it.
I was
I
like,
found
yep,
it.
I know
Yeah.
where that is.
Yeah, I know where that is. So what's the best kept secret in Michigan that more people should know about?
The best kept secret in Michigan. Um, well, I think something that's really cool is I think there's maybe 5 to 7. Don't quote me on this, but there's several different pickerel lakes in Michigan, and pickerel is, I believe, a Native American word for little pike, which is the type of fish that grow in them. And there's one up in even Pigeon River where they have elk up there. And whenever you dive into one of them, they're always going to be like the most refreshing feeling. And the reason is most of these little pike pickerel lakes are spring fed from the earth below instead of from, streams and different things like that. And so they're all over the US. And yeah, so it's kind of cool because anytime you're traveling anywhere, you can look and try to find if there's one of those special kinds of lakes.
Yeah. And
Isn't there a pickerel lake right over here in Pinckney?
I think
There
so.
is, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Fun fact.
I know.
Mm.
I'm still searching for this. When I was a kid, it was only one time. A friend of mine his family would go up north somewhere, and I want to say it's near Grayling because I remember cannons going off. But the lake that they had a cabin at that they rented, it was so cold and clear, and it was one of those spring-fed lakes. And I'm like, where is that? Because I want to go back, but I didn't think about it when I was, I was 12. So
Right. Yeah. It's a different feeling for sure. It's really cool.
Yeah. The next question is, if you could collaborate on a creative project with any fellow Michigander, past or present, who would that be?
Ooh. Gotta be a Michigander, though.
A Michigander. Shucks. I'm gonna say, like, I don't know, like, I really just I like local creatives that I've met. I'm just really inspired by, like, even seeing, like, going to Sonic Lunch, like May Irwine. For some reason, I'm just like thinking of her now because she's always at Sonic Lunch, and I think she's from Ann Arbor. And I've really always been, I first came to know her through going and attending Sonic Lunch, and I was really struck by the way that she tells her stories and her inspiration in between each song. And of course, she has a beautiful voice as well. So yeah, I think it's really
An
cool.
Excellent choice.
Yeah.
Excellent choice.
Yeah.
So we have one last question. You want to ask the last question, Chuck? It's your question. It's your
boy. I don't know how this became my question, but
it's yours.
So it basically is, what is your perfect Michigan day? Where would you go? What would you do? And what kind of beverage would you finish it off with?
Right. Yeah. Well, just keeping it to local food, like I said. I think one of the biggest changes for me when I moved to Ann Arbor that I started doing is starting my grocery shopping at the farmer's market first on Saturday mornings. And because it forces me to, instead of making a list of I want to get this and being like prescriptive, being more descriptive and curious and looking around like what's in season and what is happening. And so then I'll find something that I've never cooked before with like a big beautiful head of fennel or something like that. And then from there I kind of am like, well, what can I make with this? And then I might go to other stores and get my more prescriptive list, but I kind of build it around those things, and it helps me feel really anchored and connected to like what's actually happening and actually growing around me. So that's like a perfect Saturday morning. And then probably paddling or swimming in one of those beautiful lakes or rivers around us. And I always like Bill's is a great place to get a drink. Or if it's like a backyard, I think the thing I've realized that everyone likes about Bill's Beer Garden is actually just that they're coming to people watch. And it's this funny little like Ann Arbor thing I've realized where it's kind of like, do I know anyone? And it's like, it doesn't matter if you've met them twice and you barely know them. Like I have friends who like to sit on those little benches up at the top looking down, and they're just looking, and it's just kind of this game of Where's Waldo. And it kind of to me demonstrates that kind of like that feeling of like we're all connected and like who do I see anyone I know. So that's always like a fun place to go catch up with friends. And then if I'm there, I can't eat gluten, or so obviously I can't drink beer, but I do like Blake's hard cider is made here in Michigan, and they're great. So, and that's something that I can get at a place like Bill's. So
awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great Michigan day.
Yeah,
it is.
I might have to write that one out and try
it. You should. It's a lot of fun. It was a real mental hack for me.
Excellent. Well, Liz, thank you again so much for not only being part of the Life in Michigan podcast, but for all the things that you're doing, all the great storytelling that you're doing, and for creating the opportunities at the Open Spoon, because that is just fabulous.
Yeah, and thank you for doing what you're doing and continue to elevate all of these stories.
All right. We'll talk to you later and see you at an Open Spoon.
All right. See you at the spoon.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast service to catch every episode of Life in Michigan. Help us spread the word by rating the show, sharing it with your friends, your neighbors, your family, your mail carrier. Share it with everybody, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Stay connected by following us on our website and social media. This is a Life in Michigan production. Until next time, take care and have a fantabulous day in Michigan.